Hello. All right, I'm back. I know it hasn't been long. Just want to apologize. Before I was even done with that, I got a message that I didn't realize, and I apologize. Not everybody can read some of the stories that are on the Epoch Times, and I always like to provide you with sources because I want you to go look for yourself. I want you to read everything. I want you to look into it. I want you to form your own opinions, I guess, based on your own knowledge. So let me go over here. I'm going to go ahead and read these to you briefly for those that cannot see them. That way, I don't want anyone left out of this. So let me get you over to the first story. First story I had for part four in the description was from the Epoch Times. It's called Beijing Builds Ties with Foreign Officials to Infiltrate the West report. This was from today, and I'll just read some of this for you. It says the communist regime in China has very specific tactics when it seeks out foreign political and individuals to do its bidding, according to a recent French language report. In the eyes of the regime, some foreigners can simply be used by the Chinese agents to pass on messages or influence opinions. Another group consists of individuals who can be maneuvered either by ideology or interest into becoming useful idiots. That's what they call them. The third group of people accepts the idea of promoting the regime's interest, and Beijing entrusts them for more precise directive. Then there are those who are formally recruited by the regime. This grouping was explained in the 650-page report published by the French Military School Strategic Research Institute, known by its French acronym IRSEM, an independent agency affiliated with the French Ministry of Armed Forces. The report maps out Beijing's global influence operations, including those targeting ethnic Chinese living outside of China, and warfare doctrines underpinning its infiltration into the West. The level of penetration, the number of politicians under Beijing's influence, varies greatly from country to country. Many cases are known in Australia and New Zealand, but the phenomenon affects everyone, everywhere, the report said. John Zhang, former advisor to the New South Wales NSW state politician Shaukat Moslemain from October 2018 to September 2020, was placed under investigation last year for allegedly seeking to influence Australian politics on behalf of the Chinese regime. According to court documents, Zhang collaborated with China's Ministry of State Security and the United Front Work Department, a CCP agency that oversees the regime's foreign influence operation. The report pointed out that local or municipal politicians have been Beijing's primary targets since they are more accessible and can be approached at public events. As an example, it pointed to the Union of British Columbia Municipalities, UBCM, in Canada, an annual convention for local governments in the province of British Columbia. The CCP began sponsoring the event in 2012 before it ended in 2019 amid public criticism. I think the fact that only foreign government, I think the fact that the only foreign government that does this is China is even more troubling, and that's because we're in a situation where China is engaged in a number of actions that are completely hostile to Canadian interests, said Port Mayor Brad West in an interview with the Epoch Times in 2019 about China sponsoring the UBCM. He pointed to China's oppressive campaign in the far western Xinjiang region, where over 1 million Uyghurs and other Muslim minorities are being held in internment camps. The U.S. government has called the campaign genocide. I can't for the life of me understand why some mayors and city councilors think that they should expect free food and free drinks, and rub shoulders with officials with the government of China, West added. China's effort at influencing regional U.S. governments came to light in October last year. That month, then Secretary of State Mike Pompeo announced that the United States would discontinue taking part in a Memorandum of Understanding MOU signed between China and the United States back in 2011, which supported the creation of a U.S. China National Governors Forum. The MOU was inked by then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton in 2011. Pompeo said the Chinese People's Association for Friendship with Foreign Countries, or CPA-FFC, which co-convened the forum, had sought to directly and malignantly influence state and local leaders to promote the PRC's, People Republic of China, global agenda. China experts say CPA-FFC is operated by the United Front Work Department. China's effort to build ties with foreign politicians was done in part through China's International Department, an agency under the CCP's Central Committee, according to the report. The department's networks allow it to identify and retain politicians who are willing to defend China's image in the local media or who can act behind the scenes on behalf of the CCP, the report stated. According to its website, the International Department has built relationships with more than 600 political parties and political groups in over 160 countries. Okay, so that's the first story that I gave you to give you a little bit of background to part 4, and I'm trying to show you how to take what I showed you in part 4, the first video, and about what they saw coming a decade ago, and kind of a little bit of what be going on today. Now, I also put in the other video a link in the description to another story, which I will cover here for you. Just one second. Let me pull it up for you. It is also sorry about that. It's also from the Epoch Times, as you can see. And one second here. All right. So this is called The Lingering Ghost of the Cultural Revolution. Okay. This story is from October 2018. Okay. I wanted to cover this. It does go hand in hand. And I want you to connect the dots. I'm not here to do that for you. I'm just here to help you see dots. You can connect them. So let me start. It says, in 1984, George Orwell cautioned us the most effective way to destroy people is to deny and obliterate their own understanding of their history. Orwell further pointed out, who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past. Perhaps no entity better practices Orwell's dictum than the Chinese Communist Party, CCP. If you live in China long enough, chances are you will likely witness the CCP revising its own history periodically, depending on its leaders' political needs or perhaps mood swings. Starting this spring semester, a newly revised textbook has been adopted. Now, mind you, this story is from 2018. Chinese 8th graders are now taught a new narrative about the Great Proletarian Cultural Revolution, also known as the Cultural Revolution, that Chairman Mao Zedong launched and energized between 1966 and 1976. Markedly different content from what 8th graders studied in the previous year. The horrific and massive human suffering and death as a result of Mao's reign of terror and lawlessness during the Cultural Revolution have been well documented as public record these days. In 1981, under the leadership of Deng Xiaoping, the CCP adopted a resolution on certain historical issues of the party since the founding of the PRC, which, for the first time, denounced Mao's role in the Cultural Revolution, describing the Cultural Revolution as being disastrous and civil turmoil. Until now, all leaders who came after Deng have been following this established party line as laid out in this resolution. There are three major revisions with this new textbook. In previous edition, there was a 5-page section called 10-Year Cultural Revolution, but the new edition removed this section and combined the Cultural Revolution descriptions with another section while reducing the combined section to 3 pages only. Apparently, the current CCP leadership has made a deliberate effort to minimize the impact of the 10-year Cultural Revolution. The old edition states, in the 1960s, Mao Zedong mistakenly believed that the Central Committee of the Chinese Communist Party was engaging in revisionism and that the party and the country faced the danger of capitalist restoration. In order to prevent the restoration of capitalism, he decided to initiate the Great Cultural Revolution. The new edition, however, has removed the word mistakenly, attempting to justify Mao's motive to initiate the Cultural Revolution. It states, in the mid-1960s, Mao Zedong believed that the party and the country faced the danger of capitalist restoration, therefore emphasizing the idea of using class struggle as a principle. He wanted to prevent the restoration of capitalism by initiating the Great Cultural Revolution. By the summer of 1966, the Great Cultural Revolution had been fully launched. The new edition also adds the statement, world history always moves forward with ups and downs, thereby making light of the atrocities of the Cultural Revolution as part of the natural evolution of history. What is then the purpose of these textbook revisions and why now? This is in 2018. Many CCP members, including current top CCP leader Xi Jinping, are actually among the victims and survivors of the Cultural Revolution. In 2013, Xi, however, made some unusual remarks. Mao is a great figure who changed the face of the nation and led the Chinese people to a new destiny. The banner of Mao Zedong thought could not be lost, and losing it means a negation to the party's glorious history. The principle of holding high the banner of Mao Zedong thought should not be wavered at any time, and we will hold high the banner to advance forever. Many China watchers suspect that by reframing Mao's role in the Cultural Revolution, Xi is attempting to achieve Mao's paramount status himself, especially in light of his recent move to end the presidential term limit, which has paved the way to allow Xi to stay in power for life. Transfixed on Maoist thought. In a New York Times article, Song Young-gi, an expert on the Cultural Revolution at Cal State University in Los Angeles, used Bo Xilai, a CCP princeling, as an example to illuminate why the CCP elite is deeply attached to the doctrine, as well as the legacy of the Cultural Revolution. Bo, now behind bars as Xi's political rival, was once an avid promoter of the Red Songs from the era of the Cultural Revolution and rising CCP star, who was seen a few years ago as a successor or even replacement for Xi among those who wanted a change in leadership. In a conversation with Fang Ning, head of the Politics Institute of the Chinese Academy of Social Studies, Bo disclosed that the family was supposed to resent Mao immensely for being harshly purged during the Cultural Revolution, But upon further reckoning, Bo claimed that Mao's leadership style was still the best way to save China. In other words, promoting Maoism could actually help Bo achieve his own political ambitions, according to Song's analysis. The majority of the Chinese leaders at all levels of the government, Xi and Bo included, belong to the so-called Cultural Revolution generation, also known as the Lost Generation. They have gone through perhaps a yet more bitter experience than what George Orwell once envisioned in 1984, and their worldviews were mostly shaped since childhood by Mao's Little Red Book, quotations from Chairman Mao Zedong. Despite present day economic reform and globalization, their minds and souls have been deeply ingrained with Maoist doctrines, which they continue to hold relevant in this digital era. This appears to be true with many of the Cultural Revolution generation. It would be a daunting task to think outside the box, especially in a closed society. As Carl Jung once noted, the wine of youth does not always clear with advancing years. Sometimes it grows turbid. In 1989, when thousands of college students rallied for democracy on Tiananmen Square, a few might have noticed that these students often drew inspiration and fellowship by singing L'Internationale, the best known communist anthem from the 19th century socialist movement, because that was one of the few songs they all knew by heart back then, growing up in the shadow of the Cultural Revolution. Living in a closed society, these young people were not able to create any new song for political reform, nor was it possible at that time for them to be aware of Western protest songs such as We Shall Overcome and Blowing in the Wind. Haunting the populace. Major disparities appear between people living in communist societies and democracies in terms of language uses, mentality, way of life, and culture. The contrast comes into sharp focus when comparing people who lived in East and West Germany, or those who are living now in North and South Korea, or those who live in mainland China and territories outside mainland China, such as Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Macau. Since 1949, or after the CCP overtook mainland China, those who live outside the communist rule, such as Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Macau, have been spared the communist brainwashing process as well as various political campaigns. As a result, these Chinese people, often labeled as overseas Chinese by the mainland Chinese, continue to use traditional Chinese characters and uphold 5,000-year-old Chinese traditions, while an almost opposite path has been taken in mainland China over the past 69 years. Unlike open societies where multiple versions of textbooks are available, in China there is only one version of textbooks and the CCP controls the content. These latest textbook revisions, however, did not come out without sparking some emotional debates from almost all sectors of society in China, as the Cultural Revolution remains a tormenting memory for many millions of Chinese people who lived through it, and they fear the second coming of the calamity. Once again, we witness that online critical posts by the Chinese netizens have been quickly harmonized or deleted by the cyber cops. Once one tweeted, "We always protest Japanese textbooks for whitewashing the crimes during World War II in China, but the party doctors our own history shamelessly to deceive our future generation." Excuse me. By embracing the ghost of Cultural Revolution, the CCP rulers are continuing to haunt the populace with the past nightmare. They seem to have forgotten the stern warning from their guru, Karl Marx. History repeats itself, first as tragedy, second as farce. As noted by Song Youngji in the New York Times article, if one wants to know whether the Cultural Revolution has truly ended, just find out if Mao's portrait on portrait, sorry, on Gate of Heavenly Peace, Tiananmen, has been taken down or not. Okay? So, I don't want to make any comments on this. This is just me covering a story that was done in 2018 after covering a story that was just recently done and letting you put things together. Okay? I'd love to discuss it. I'm here. Um, I'll always answer questions to the best of my ability, but I don't want to think for you. Okay? I want you to think for yourself. I just want to help. We are all brothers and sisters in Christ Jesus, and God is on our side, and God always wins. He's given us knowledge. We have many tools, prayer being one. We need to use both of those more, especially in what I feel are the times that we're going to go through. So I'm going to leave it at that for now. God bless you all. I love you, sending you all immense love from my heart. Be blessed today. See you soon.